TX Factor is brought to you in association with Martin Lynch & Sons, the world's favourite ham store.
Hello and welcome to this eagerly anticipated 10th episode of TX Factor. I'm Bob McCready, and as I'm from Cornwall and at the moment I'm in Cornwall, I'm GK0FGX. More on that in a bit. Now, whereabouts in Cornwall am I? Well, you can see this sort of flat, featureless landscape behind us. It's Goonhilly Down, a place that is enlivened somewhat by some exciting technical objects like this fella here.
And we'll be finding out how this world-famous Earth Station is playing a role in a major UK school space project. And we'll be returning to a spot very close to our hearts to find out how this amateur helped to soften the hearts of the mighty UK media regulator Ofcom. We'll be reviewing the popular all-mode transceiver, the FT-991 from Yeasu. And Mike Marsh goes back to his roots to see how 21st century students at his old school in Devon will be linking up with a famous British astronaut.
Wow, it's incredible to think that that massive dish here at Goonhilly Earth Station is actually a listed building. That is antenna number 1, that's what they call it now, but it used to be called Arthur, and all the dishes here on this site were named after characters from Arthurian legend, but this one, Arthur himself, is the most important because that was the dish that was used for the first TV pictures to come across the Atlantic from America to the UK. The Telstar satellite wasn't a geosynchronous satellite like we use today, so it didn't stay one fixed point up there in the heavens. It went from horizon to horizon in about 20 minutes. And that's why they chose Goonhilly here in Cornwall as the site, because it's very flat with a good view horizon to horizon and no hills in the way. Oh, and also, imagine what you need to bolt that dish to ensure it doesn't blow away in a gale. Well, under the ground here is granite and serpentine, which is very strong rock, and that's what that's anchored into. So that's what you needed to get pictures from America to the UK in 1962, but we're here today to get pictures from space. Hi Noel.
Morning Bob.
So this dish a little bit smaller than that one.
Yes, this is a 3.8 metre dish compared to Arthur, but of course the key to this one is that it's capable of tracking low Earth orbit satellites, which means that it can track something like the ISS, which is moving at 17,000 miles an hour across the sky.
Now there's a tremendous amount of media interest at the moment he's being described in the papers as Major Tim Peake up there on the ISS.
That's right, and of course he's not Major Tim Peake for the purposes of this mission. He is Tim Peake because it's a non-military environment.
Oh right, so the ISS is a civilian operation?
Absolutely, yes.
All right, forget the Major, but he still has the amateur radio call sign, which takes us to amateur radio on the ISS, ARIS, which is really why we're here today.
Yes, the ARIS operation for Tim's Principia mission involves the VHF communications between schools and him on the ISS, but it also, for the very first time, will include the use of the ham TV transmitter, which is on the ISS, and will give us live pictures from the ISS as Tim is talking to the schools. And the reason why we're here at Goonhilly is because we're using this dish, which is known as GHY99,
catchy name,
track indeed, to track the ISS as it goes across the sky. And so we will be taking pictures from here and using them as a backup for the live link that we're setting up at each of the schools that we're visiting.
I'll tell you what, Noel, this is very different to the normal domestic setup, isn't it? Where you have small dish, big house. We've got massive dish, garden shed.
And come and have a look at the equipment that's in the shed then.
Right, I guess this is where all the exciting techie stuff lives.
Yes, absolutely.
Ah, yes.
Okay, so here in the cabinet we've got the Earth Station controller, which is the big box owned by Satellite Catapult, who are the owners of the dish and have very kindly loaned us the use of the dish for the whole of the Principia mission. And then separately to that, we've got our 2.3 gigahertz receiver for the amateur TV transmissions.
Now for your sins, Noel, you're the chairman of the BATC, the British Amateur Television Club, so you're very excited by all things televisual. Digital ATV is something that's becoming much more widespread, but I guess this is a real leap forward, digital ATV coming from space.
Absolutely, and it's really exciting, and the BATC is excited to be part of this project to receive what is a standard amateur television signal coming from the ISS, but clearly it's much more difficult to receive because of the whole nature of the ISS travelling across the sky and not being geostationary.
There's been amateur radio on the Mir space station before and now on the ISS, so that's been happening from space for quite a long time. But getting ATV up there has taken quite a few years, so this is very exciting.
Oh yes, it is very exciting, and as you say, amateur radio has been on board space station since 1983 actually. But amateur television on the ISS is a very new initiative, and it actually is a digital amateur television transmitter using DVB-S standard on 2.4 gigahertz, and clearly that's why we need the dish size that we've got here to receive it.
With all the excitement of having a British astronaut in space, which is an historic moment, it seems rather appropriate that we're at such an historic site with Arthur behind us there, the dish that was used to pick up those Telstar signals from space. So how does it come that you were able to set up your ground station here?
Yes, so you're right, it is fantastic to be here at this iconic site, and it's through the generosity of Ian Jones, the Managing Director of Goonhilly Earth Station, and also the owners of the dish, who are Satellite Catapult, the government initiative, that we're here. And it all came about because of connections through AMSAT, who've got a FunCube Earth Station down here, that when ARIS were looking to put in an Earth Station to receive the ISS TV transmissions, the obvious place was to ask Ian, and it really has worked out very, very well. And we're very appreciative of the support that Goonhilly and Catapult have given the ARIS project.
For the school's ARIS contacts, so this is the belt and braces part of the video downlink, because this is actually the backup, isn't it?
Yes, and at the school we will have a Land Rover with a 1.2 metre dish, which is actually receiving the video in real time, so we can show the students that, you know, this is real amateur radio and not just something coming up over the internet from Goonhilly or wherever.
But you did need to have a backup plan because the pictures are a very important part of the ARIS school's contacts, aren't they? So it's very exciting for those students to be able to see Tim Peake and the International Space Station coming live from space.
Yes, absolutely, and of course there's a real scientific angle on it as well. Is why does a 3.8 metre dish at Goonhilly get the pictures probably for longer than a 1.2 metre dish at the actual school will? And so there's science all over, you know, that we can talk about when we're talking to the students. And the amateur radio context really brings the whole Tim Peake Principia mission alive, and it's the highlight of the science and technology outreach program that has been put together.
Let's have a closer look at the actual technical side of it then. This is typical of the program that people who are into ATV would run normally.
Yeah, so this is the Tune software, which is written by F6DZP and is used by a lot of amateur television operators to receive the digital TV signals.
To me, what is amazing about the whole concept of the ARIS school contacts is the people like yourself. So you come from a British Amateur TV Club background, so you're an amateur TV enthusiast. There's the other radio amateurs that all come together and make this whole thing happen in such a professional way, the professionalism of the amateurs that make this happen.
Yes, and one of the great things we stress when we're at the schools is that this is amateur radio. And imagine that if we as amateurs can do something like this, what you as a professional can do if you chose to take engineering as your career.
Noel, thank you so much for showing us the kit you've got down here at Goonhilly, but we're going to be meeting you again fairly soon, because at the end of April, not sure of the exact date yet, but there's going to be an ARIS schools contact with a school in Devon, in Ottery Saint Mary, called King's School, and we're coming along to make a TX Factor show about that, and you're going to be there, so you can show us the kit from that end, which will be fantastic.
Yes, and if you want to keep up to date with everything else that's happening, and also watch the live webcasts from the other schools between now and Ottery Saint Mary, just go to the ARIS Principia website.
Now, I've got a very important question about Goonhilly Earth Station. in amongst all the high-tech gear we've got here, have they got anything that makes coffee?
Yes, come on, Bob.
Still to come on TX Factor, it's back to the Lizard Peninsula, where several years ago we discovered the truth about the letter S. Now on our return, we get to the bottom of the controversy of the letter K. Martin Lynch & Sons now stocked an excellent selection of DMR handies and mobiles for all tastes. Top of the tree is the superb range of Hytera handhelds and mobiles, followed by TYT and Wushan. With prices starting from under £150, check out our entire range by visiting the DMR section on our website, or call into the store and ask for the DMR specialists. Martin Lynch & Sons, the world's favourite ham store.
Well, it's lovely to be back here at the Marconi Centre in Poldhu Cove in Cornwall, the birthplace of transatlantic radio and of course the birthplace of TX Factor, because it was right here that we recorded our very first episode. Now, the reason I'm here today is to talk about a subject that's not been without some controversy, and that is the adding of a regional secondary locator to Cornish call signs. So, for example, my call, G0FGX, is now GK0FGX, but just for a year. When the idea was first put forward, there were quite a few objections to it being permanently granted, so a compromise has been reached where it's done by an NOV. So we've come here today to meet the man behind the K for Kerno RSL. Let's go inside and meet him.
Hello CQ, CQ20, Golf Kilo 3, Mike Papa Delta. Golf Kilo 3, Mike Papa Delta, the Marconi Centre in Cornwall, calling CQ and listening.
Nothing hurt, so I think this is a good moment to interrupt John. John?
Oh, Mike.
So I didn't want to make you jump there because you've got your headphones on.
Okay.
Can I pull up a chair and find out a bit more about the GK call sign?
Certainly.
So, you're using the call sign here, Golf Kilo 3, Mike Papa Delta.
That's right.
A lot of Cornish amateurs now using the RSL, a regional secondary locator.
Sure. Yeah.
What's the story? How did this come about for Cornwall?
Well, in March 2014, Danny Alexander, the then Secretary of State for the Treasury, announced that Cornwall would be given minority status because of its Celtic heritage. In about April, a few of us here at the Poldhu Radio Club decided that it might be a good idea to try and get a K for Kerno as a special call sign to promote the Kerno heritage.
So it's a bit like GM for Scotland, GW for Wales, or the Isle of Man is GD.
That's right.
Nearly didn't remember that one. So it's the same kind of principle.
Oh, it is, exactly, yes. Well, we thought, well, there's no reason why we shouldn't. We're on an equal footing now with Wales and Scotland, all these Celtic other nations. So why can't we have a K for Kerno? So we applied to Ofcom to get this K for Kerno, and they originally agreed that, yes, you can have the K for Kerno. Unfortunately, the RSGB decided in their wisdom to put in a little objection to that for some reason, because they didn't think it was the kind of thing that Ofcom could actually do to give an RSL for Cornwall, because it's not a separate, it hasn't got a government as such. So in actual fact, it was, and then Ofcom turned around and said, sorry, you can't have it after all. Well, we weren't going to give up on that, and we pushed and pushed and pushed, and eventually Ofcom relented and said, all right, you can have it for 1 year. So we're running it from January of 2016 to the end of December 2016, and that'll be it. Hopefully, if it goes well, we might be able to persuade Ofcom to give it to us permanently, but for now, it's just for 1 year.
And at the end of the day, it's just adding a bit of fun and spice to amateur radio, and that's what amateur radio is all about.
Well, of course it is. I mean, I've been on this afternoon, and I've worked, I don't know, 30 stations in half an hour on CW, and it's great. I mean, it's the same at home as well. I've had nearly 700 contacts from my home station.
Is there a lot of interest in that special call?
Oh yes, there is. I'm on a couple of CQ calls, and I've got little pile-up. It's absolutely marvellous. It's something I've always been at the other end of the pile-ups trying to work the DX, but now they're working me, and I've got to try and up my game a bit to try and get my operating skills up. It's great all the way around. Yes, it's really good.
An important point about this, John, is that it's gone by the NOV route, which means that in order to use the GK prefix,
you have to get an NOV to your license. So that's different to GW or GM, whereas you would use that if you were a visitor to those parts of the world, wouldn't you?
The NOV is linked to your main address. So on your NOV application, you've got to put the same address as for your main station. You can't use it outside of the Cornwall.
There is, however, an upside to that because you're doing an award for working the GK stations, so that makes us rarer.
Oh, it does, certainly. Yes, with the current award, it's doing quite well. I've already had an application from a guy in Hungary. He's got the bronze award, which is the lowest one, but he's already worked enough for that. I've had a sked with a Russian amateur, and I worked him on sideband, CW and RTTY, one after the other.
I think I've had an email from the same amateur asking to have a sked with me.
That's right, so. Well, and Ellis, one of our other members here at the club, has done the same thing. So he's going for his gold award, I think, and he's going to get it quite quickly.
So how does the award work?
Well, the award works, it's quite easy really. You just have to work 30 points, 30 stations. You can work them on the same station on one band, same mode or different modes. So you could work CW sideband RTTY on 20 metres, that's 3 points. If you work the GK3 MPD station, which we've got here, that counts 5 points because it's a special station. So I've allowed that for a little bit special. So anyone working us today can claim 5 points for the GK3 MPD station.
So how many points do you need to get, John?
Well, you need 30 points for gold, it's 20 points for silver and 10 for bronze.
Where can we get all the information, John, then?
It's on the GB2GM website, which is quite easy to find. There's all the details about the Kerner Award and also the information on how we got to the NOV in the first place.
Fantastic. And of course, don't forget, if you go to our website, you can get all the details in the show notes.
At the start of this episode, we mentioned a major schools project where students from around the UK will get a chance to link up with the first British astronaut in space, Tim Peake, who's currently aboard the International Space Station on his Principia mission. The ARIS organisation has invited schools to bid for the privilege to become one of 10 schools to take part in this exciting project.
Apple for the teacher. See you at school.
And our very own Mike Marsh has been invited to host one such event to be held in early May 2016.
I think the school bus used to break down about here every time.
For TX Factor, Mike's returned to his old seat of learning, the King's School in Ottery Saint Mary in Devon, to work alongside STEM teacher Alison Argent-Vence to organise a week of STEM and space-related activities, culminating in a link-up with Tim Peake as the International Space Station passes over the school.
Well, I'm back in the main hall again now, which is very echo at the moment because nobody's here. I spent many a time as a student sat on the floor for school assembly. In a second, it's going to be packed out with around about 800 children finding out for the first time that they've been awarded one of the lucky contacts with Tim Peake. This also used to double up as the gym where I put myself through much physical strenuous exercise.
We've been filming the events leading up to the big day in May for a TX Factor special later in the year.
This is called building up to the most exciting announcement this school's had, well, ever since I was here, really.
So, Tim Peake, first British European Space Agency astronaut, is up there right now. I'd like to introduce Mr. Mike Marsh, and he is a really keen amateur radio enthusiast and just generally tech type of guy. And he came in about a year and a half ago and said there was a possibility of schools entering a competition to speak live to the British astronaut whilst he's on the space station. I was like, no way. He said, yes way. He showed me this competition that we could enter, which I did. It's quite a major event. We've been selected. In order to be chosen to be in the audience on the day or the one of the 10 asking the questions, you're going to send me a postcard from space. The main thing on this side is what you want to ask Tim. What would you ask an astronaut, a British astronaut, the first British astronaut on the International Space Station, but you need to do your research, okay? Thank you very much.
Fantastic. So Alison's just literally announced to the students at school that they're one of the lucky 10 schools that has an ARIS contact with Tim Peake aboard the International Space Station. We're T-minus around about 2 or 3 months now, and I can't wait for the big day to happen. Excited? That's an understatement.
I'm at the Martin Lynch & Sons store in Staines. I've come to see Steve, G0TAN, for a bit of advice.
Okay, what's that?
Well, I've got a Yeasu FT-847. Okay. It's more of a member of the family than a rig. I've had it over 10 years, and I've started to think, what happens should it turn up? The worst happens, it turns up its toes. Okay. Where could I find a similar small size shack-in-a-box solution?
What you're looking at now, if you're going to stick with Yeasu, you're going to look at the FT-991.
Hello, Yeasu's FT-991. So, tell me about this then. Why is this a replacement for the 847?
It's basically, it does pretty much everything that the 847 used to do. It can cope with Yeasu's System Fusion, the C4 FM mode of transmission. It's a lot easier to use because it's got like a 3.5-inch touchscreen display.
So you've described this as a shack in the box, Steve. What frequencies does it cover?
It covers frequency bands. It covers all the amateur bands from 1.8 to 50 megs, 2 meters and 70 sems. Receive coverage is a lot wider than that too.
And what about 5 megs?
It does 5 megs as well as standard. It does they're channelized. We can provide widebanding on this so that it now covers all of the options available to you if you have a suitable NOV for 5 megs.
ATU?
It has an inbuilt ATU, which covers mismatch up to about 3 to 1.
So far, very much the same as the 847. So where are the differences?
The differences, there's 2 things that I can think of straight away. First of all, it actually supports Yeasu's System Fusion, has the C4 FM mode of transmission. So the problem with compact radios in general, whether it's Yeasu, ICOM, Kenwood, or whatever, is that they've got a lot of functionality in them, and there's only a certain amount of space to put buttons and things. So the way Yeasu, the 991's got around that, they have this great colour touchscreen display, and everything you can access through that touchscreen. So you don't need a big landscape full of buttons and things.
So let's have a look at how that actually works then.
Okay, so what you can do, so if you want to change bands, you just press the band button and everything appears here on the display, and you can just touch it and change bands instantaneously. It's very, very good.
And does the same thing happen if you want to select a mode?
Yes, so if we come out of the band option and select mode, there you go, you have your LSB, USB, AM, and all the way up to C4 FM.
So that's a lot more straightforward than fiddling your way through menus, but presumably there are, as with any modern radio, still quite a lot of menu settings you can interfere with.
There are indeed. Now, the screen that you can see there straight away is the standard screen as it comes with. And you've got your meter selection at the bottom, which is currently set to power output. You have your RF power adjustment, your mic gain adjustment, and your sweep, which controls the band scope that you can see there. It's currently not running. And we have this multi-function knob here, so if I was to select RF power, for instance, I can change, if you look at the top, I can change the actual RF power, you can see that going down, and if I want to change the mic gain, to just touch the mic gain, and the same thing with that, you can change and adjust your mic gain levels.
So very easy to find the settings.
Very easy. So that's the very basic menu. You can actually go through, if I go to, say, I think it's that one there, presents you with another alternate, the next layer down, next level down of menu systems. And on here you just touch the forward, hopefully, and the back buttons to go through the various options for you. Things like here we have noise blanker, you've got your narrow wide filter settings, the AGC settings, and again if you want to just touch that, and then you can use the control to change that. And then if you want to start getting into the really serious stuff, you can go to the next level down, and that you can start tailoring your TX audio. There's a lot of equalization that you can start playing with and things like that.
And the stuff that you might need in the middle of a QSO, in the middle of that pile-up, you can get to straight away in the first layer.
Absolutely. And they do have a CS button here, so if you've got a frequently favourite button that you want to, a menu item that you want to go and adjust, you can just program it, that CS button, and it could take you straight to that menu.
If we can go back to see the sweep mode, because
Yes,
again, it's quite a wide chunk of bandwidth that you've got on that
It is.
sweep.
That chunk that you see, you can tailor in the menu system, so you can actually filter close in, or you can get a little bit further out. It depends what you want to do. At the moment, it's actually set, it's fixed, it's not scanning. If I turn the volume up, so what you'll see is on the band scope, pretty much like most other radios with band scopes, you can have a couple of modes where you either have it fixed or you have the whole thing sliding along. And then what will happen is, there we go. Oh, there's something there, it's not station. But what you'll see is as you're going along, your marker on the screen will go off the screen and the whole thing then suddenly shifts, and then you start again. You can actually get it to continuously sweep by pressing and holding the sweep button, but because it's only got a single receiver in here, it does actually have to mute the audio. But it's actually scanning all the time, and then if you sort of see where it goes, you can actually tune down until you get to a peak in the center, and then you just touch the sweep again, and you should be somewhere
on that signal.
On that signal, so you can actually see that.
And another interesting point about it is, it's actually cheaper than my 847 was when I bought it 10 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely cheaper.
Looking at the back of the radio, quite a few connectors there. So what are all these for, Steve?
Okay, so we have the N-type connector here. This is used for your VHF, UHF antenna. The standard SO239 socket for the HF and 6 meters. Power connector here. At the bottom you have, I don't know whether you can see it here, you have the GPS CAT interface.
Ooh, right.
So yeah, quite useful. Quite an important one here is the USB connector. The reason I pointed that out to you is that this radio, if you connect it to your PC, just straightforward with a normal USB cable, you can start running digital modes and things like that. There's no need for any extra sound cards or anything like that. Just run something like Ham Radio Deluxe and away you go.
That's amazing. So
yep.
It really is a shack in the box, because it's even got that.
You don't need anything else, no.
Now, winding back a bit, GPS?
GPS, you have the ability to connect an external GPS to this. And basically, the GPS that you use will pass things like NMEA data and things like that in serial format. So this can actually sort out your location data and then provide that as APRS if you're into that sort of thing.
And it's got the same sockets on the back here as I had on my 847, the same RTTY data socket and the same tuner socket. So will that work with my tuner that I've got, my existing Yeasu tuner? Yes,
exactly the same tuner and linear connector as well. It work with that. So what else have you got there? The only other two things, you have the remote ALC if you're running linear amplifier, or if you're running a remote keypad for contesting, and an external speaker socket.
And a fairly substantial fan as well.
Yeah, but it's very quiet.
And of course, no software-defined radio within this, as we're seeing in a lot of modern radios now. This is traditional architecture. It's
traditional architecture. There's a lot of software in there, but it's not software defined as in the receiver type architecture, where you're doing direct sampling and then processing it in a DSP.
Now, honestly, when you sit down with this radio for the first time with the manual in your hand, which can be a daunting moment, is it pretty straightforward to get it up and running?
It is, absolutely, yeah. I would say if anyone's going to get one of these radios, I always advise people, our customers and things, to just go and put it on your coffee table, get a cup of coffee or something a bit stronger maybe, and spend half an hour to an hour just going through and getting used to it. Having said that, if you just plug it straight in, start operating, it's already set up to get you going.
There we are. The possible replacement for my trusty FT-847. And you know what? I think I might not wait until it actually dies before I take one of these on. I hope it won't offend it too much when I take it home.
Run them side by side.
Exactly.
TX Factor is now 2 years old, and throughout that time we've enjoyed the faithful support of our main sponsor, Martin Lynch & Sons. Although Martin continues to help us bring you regular high-quality, informative and entertaining films about the hobby we love, the level of sponsorship is not quite enough to meet the high costs of production to which we've become accustomed. And sadly, unless we raise our income, the gaps between each episode will be longer. So, if you've enjoyed the first 10 episodes of TX Factor and would like to help ensure its long-term future, would you consider giving a donation to help cover the costs of production? If the answer is yes, please visit our website at txfactor.co.uk, where you'll find more details about how TX Factor is funded, the people behind the project, and where to click to make a donation. Every penny raised will go towards the production of future TX Factor episodes and will ensure the frequency and quality of the shows remain high. TX Factor, the only UK-produced TV show dedicated to all things radio.
So that's it for this episode of TX Factor, the only TV show dedicated to all things radio. And to be honest, we got around a bit this episode too, didn't we? We've even been into space. Oh, and we went to Ottery Saint Mary in Devon, where I was very excited with the question that Alison asked her students at King's School to get a chance to speak to Tim Peake on the International Space Station. All they've got to do is come up with a good question to ask Tim Peake, and they could win the opportunity to speak to him during that school's contact. And don't forget, TX Factor will be there to film the whole thing and bring you all the excitement as that Devon school boldly goes into space. And in fact, I'm sitting here trying to think of a good question to ask Tim myself. I mean, I'm not too old, am I, to have a go at this? It's not that long ago I left school. So, a question that nobody else has asked him. Got it. Dear Tim, how do you go to the toilet in space? Yeah, but nobody's ever asked him that before. I'm doing it, sir. Always picking on me.
Now, it's incredible to think, isn't it, when you've got this 60-centimetre dish on the side of your house these days that'll pick up Sky or Freeview TV, cellular. Do that again. So Arthur there was actually able to track it. Now, imagine the mechanics of getting that dick, Imagine the mechanics.
Right, look at me again. And come and have a look at the equipment that's in the shed then.
Right, I guess this is where all the exciting techie stuff lives.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we did that without moving our hand.
Automatic doors.
We'll do that again, shall we?
Right, we've got to act seriously now because all the students are arriving and they're going to think I'm an absolute idiot.
TX Factor is brought to you in association with Martin Lynch & Sons, the world's favourite ham store.